If there's one thing you take away from today's video, it should be to get your utility involved in early when it comes to fleet electrification. Hey, how are ya? Patrick Brewer here, Plug-in BC's Fleet Advisor. And today, I'm really pleased to be welcoming my friend Jason, Key Account Manager with BC Hydro. He will be presenting on fleet electrification.
Okay, so today I'll provide an overview of our new fleet electrification guidelines, our BC Hydro fast chargers, some socioeconomic benefits with EVs in British Columbia, and then I'm going to run through a simple light-duty fleet case study. We recently published our fleet electrification guidelines on bchydro.com. The guidelines provide an overview of BC Hydro and the Clean BC plan, as well as the benefits to EV adoption in British Columbia. But the primary purpose of the guidelines is to provide a high-level overview of the key considerations for fleet electrification planning. We use a simple business case, similar to the one I'm going to talk about today, to walk through the specific steps of planning, including alignment with your organizational goals, analyzing your existing fleet for suitability, determining your charging needs, understanding facility readiness, and suggestions on how business cases could be developed and deployed. The guidelines are very high level. They provide a starting point for the key steps to consider. And we'd really welcome any feedback on these guidelines, as we're hoping to continuously improve them. And on the slide, you'll see there's a link to the bchydro.com website where the guidelines are published. BC Hydro has deployed over 70 fast charging stations in the province in support of the Clean BC plan. The locations are along major corridors to help EV adoption by providing en route charging options. There has been significant usage at many of them, and we are continuing expansion plans to serve outlier communities. With our existing urban center stations, we are now often expanding them to avoid lineups. Our EV programs team that manages the fast charging stations has done an excellent job with station deployments. They won an award in 2019 for the design thinking principles. They have also put together a best practices guideline for fast charging stations, and we expect to have one for level 2 charging soon. Our stations have strong reliability standards and a 24-hour call center for station issues. We recently completed a Socioeconomics Benefits study with a specific focus on British Columbia. We hope to publish that report and a simple infographic soon that can help our customers with value propositions in their business cases. I want to share a few highlights from that report. The economic benefits in the province are significant beyond the cost savings associated with the total cost of ownership of the vehicle. Healthcare costs associated with poor air quality, of which transportation is a significant contributor, are estimated to be $30 billion between 2008 and 2031. Also, think about the amount of money spent on diesel and gas every day, $24 million. That's staggering. Consider that most of that money leaves the province too. Electrification will keep that revenue in the province. And electricity as a fuel is a fraction of the cost of gas or diesel, as I will show later in our case study. From a health and well-being perspective, poor air quality, especially in transportation corridors, has a significant impact on premature deaths, hospital admissions, and illnesses. Noise also contributes to health effects, and EVs are much quieter, which can also result in more productive fleets. Health equity in urban centers can be improved too, as often major transportation corridors and heavy traffic hubs are surrounded by lower income housing. Most of us are well aware of the significant greenhouse gas reductions EVs offer, especially in British Columbia with hydroelectricity. The air pollution benefits are significant as well, as EVs do not have any tailpipe emissions. Additionally, EVs are more efficient and emit much less heat, reducing the urban heat island effect considerably. So the next few slides will focus on our light-duty fleet case study. Our fleet is comprised of 30 Chevy Bolts. When in service, each Bolt has a lot of daily mileage, 250 kilometers a day. So this is what we call our duty cycle. On average, each Bolt drives 40,000 kilometers per year, and the Bolts are parked overnight in a depot between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. This is what we would call our dwell time for this vehicle. The basic specs of a Chevy Bolt show it has a 60 kilowatt-hour battery, an efficiency of 16 kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometers, and a range of 380 kilometers. Now we can determine what level of charging we need to support our fleet. I'll walk through some simple calculations. Starting on the left, we know we have 30 Bolts that drive 250 kilometers per day. They have an efficiency of 0.16 kilowatt hours per kilometer. So 30 times 250 kilometers a day times 0.16 kilowatt hours per kilometer equals 1,200 kilowatt hours per day. This means that we need 1,200 kilowatt hours of energy every day for that fleet. We know that our cars are idle overnight in our depot for 8 hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So the average power demand we need for those 30 cars is 1,200 kilowatt hours divided by that 8 hours, which equals 150 kilowatt of power for that entire fleet of 30 bolts. This is what we call our peak demand for that fleet. On a per vehicle basis, we have 150 kilowatts divided by 30 bolts. So we need a minimum of 5 kilowatts of charging per bolt to make sure there's enough range for the 250 kilometers the next day. Level 2 chargers are typically 7 kilowatts, so level 2 charging for this fleet would be adequate. Before we figure out costs for our fleet, let's review the basic fundamentals of BC Hydro electricity rate structures. For business customers, we have 3 rate classes: SGS, Small General Service, MGS, Medium General Service, and LGS, Large General Service, defined by the level of the facility's power requirements or the peak demand and the annual energy usage. There are a number of components to the billing structure. The basic charge is a small daily amount to cover fixed customer costs. The demand charge is a charge associated with that peak demand power usage of the 150 kilowatts I mentioned in our example. And you can see that this demand charge can be costly in the LGS category at $12.22 per kilowatt. I'll get to that later in our example. The energy charge is basically your dollar per liter cost for fuel, but in this case, it's cents per kilowatt hours. I won't explain power factor too much. It is basically a charge related to the efficiency of power usage at your site. And we also have some discounts depending on the nature of your service that might apply. I mentioned the demand charge and how this could be costly, especially for fleets like our bolts. They will have a demand charge of 150 kilowatts times $12.22 per kilowatt, or $1,800 a month if this organization is an LGS customer. So we have introduced fleet electrification rates for our fleet customers to support electrification. They were approved by the BCUC in April, and the first one in the slide is the overnight rate, which applies directly to our case study here today. Basically, it relieves all demand charges associated with that fleet between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. with a slightly higher energy charge. It will be available next April, and the rates for that overnight rate will be official then. The second fleet rate on this slide is our demand transition rate. This rate removes the demand charge throughout the day for the fleet with a slightly higher energy charge for a period of 6 years. The demand charge and energy rate then ramp back to their normal states. This is designed for fleets with more charging needs throughout the day to allow them a period of time to develop load management strategies. This rate is available now. Both of these rates are optional, and they have to be a minimum of 150 kilowatts of demand. These rates are for fleets only, meaning they cannot be used to discount other building loads. And fleet charging has to be separately metered. So we have developed a rates calculator that includes these new transportation rates to determine your fuel costs for your EV fleet. There are some basic inputs that we have to enter for our fleet, shown in the yellow cells. Our average energy consumption per month, based on 40,000 kilometers per year per bolt, works out to 16,000 kilowatt hours a month. We know our peak demand for the fleet of bolts is 150 kilowatts. For this case study, we'll say that the electrical service to the site is primary and the power factor is 90%. And we know our fleet charging is at the depot. So now we can see the overall monthly fuel costs, but also compare the normal LGS billing rate with the savings from our new fleet transportation rates. You can see the overnight rate saves us almost $20,000 a year for this fleet compared to the normal LGS rate. Our fuel cost then for this fleet of bolts is $14,345 per year. We can enter our fleet numbers now into total cost of ownership model to compare annual costs. We could easily have a full webinar just on total cost of ownership calculations and models. There are a number of total cost ownership tools available. Many of them are very complex. Plug-in BC and West Coast Electric Fleets has a tool that does procurement analysis, and there are other tools available online from organizations such as Drive to Zero and the North American Council for Freight Efficiency. I used a very simple one from Richmond Sustainability Initiatives for some basic high-level numbers for our simple case study today. So let's look at some of the numbers for a fleet of bolts compared to a fleet of similar gas cars, a fleet of Chevy Malibus. Keep in mind, these are numbers for the entire fleet of 30 vehicles. The annual maintenance comparison might seem shockingly low for the bolts, but keep in mind EVs have very little maintenance. There are far less moving parts to go wrong, and the brakes are preserved because of the regenerative braking on deceleration. There are no oil changes required or ignition systems to service. I personally have a Chevy Bolt that is now 3 years old, and I have not done any maintenance on it whatsoever. So annual maintenance savings are significant for this fleet at $30,000 a year. But what about fuel costs? In our model, we use $1.20 per liter for gas and 6 cents a kilowatt hour. This is the LGS rate I mentioned earlier. We did our rate calculation using the new overnight fleet transportation rate as well. Our annual electricity costs for the fleet of Bolts was $14,345 compared to almost $200,000 in gas costs for the Malibus. Clearly, fuel savings are significant for EVs. Let's just think of that from a tank of gas perspective. Our Bolt has a 60 kilowatt hour battery. The tank of gas, or a full charge for our Bolt, is $3.60. A full charge gets you 380 kilometers. A Chevy Malibu has a 60-liter tank, so at $1.20 a liter, that's $72 for a full tank of gas. But at 10 liters per 100 kilometers, you can go 600 kilometers on a tank. So the fuel cost for the Malibu to drive 380 kilometers is about $45, over 12 times the cost of the Bolt. It's not all positive news, however. EVs have a higher capital cost, even with incentives, so the cost of capital and depreciation is not as favorable. Overall, the EV fleet does offer significant annual savings. In this example, we are saving close to $140,000 per year for this fleet. This can help justify the cost of electrical charging infrastructure. This illustrates the importance of using total cost of ownership models. In addition to cost savings, as we have now discussed, we will have significant environmental benefits as well. No tailpipe emissions and 360 tons of greenhouse gas savings annually. The higher the vehicle utilization, the better the savings with the EV fleet. If I can leave you with one message, it is to please talk to us early in your fleet electrification planning. If you have a key account manager, you can reach out to them or to me directly. We can help you with pre-assessments for your facilities, get you ready for applications to our design team. We can help you look at costs, such as the calculator that I just showed you, and we can help with tools and resources as well. And thank you for your time today.